That's just who she is. And we're live. It's fantastic to be here. I am Naomi Calhoun, one of the LRG podcasters, and this is the LRG podcast. Shocker, you found it. This is the Survivor New York Blood versus Water recap of episode 6, which is the final episode before the merge happens. I am joined by you're perfect, you're beautiful, you look like a model, you look like Linda Evangelista. It's Chris Lord. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here with you. A very long-time friend, Kirk. I've known him since 2016, so it's so nice to chat with him. And one of my favorites pre-game, Josh. Unfortunately, I'm so sad, but I'm so excited to be with all of you guys.
I am so excited too. I'm so excited to be with one of my new quarantine friends, Kirk. Kirk, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to jump in and be a special guest. I was kind of begging to hopefully get to be on one of these, so I'm super thankful. And it's really cool to talk to Chris. We played Survivor Pirate Booty Camp Season 2 together and lasted all the days together. It was really brutal.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe we need to do like a podcast on that, Kirk. We should do that.
Yeah.
That is an experience. Anytime you survive with somebody that long, it like becomes a bond that is just like
especially when Taco Bell is involved, right, Kirk?
Exactly. Don't eat the fire sauce.
Was booty camp just for gay men? Was that?
Honestly, no. I wish. I might have done better.
And look who it is. We have the last eliminated player from the pre-merge. One of my favorites. I mean, they're all my favorite, but Josh is particularly. Josh, you and Sarah drove me home. I still can't thank you enough for that. Josh, how are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
We are so excited to get to talk to you, to get to learn everything, not only about this episode, but just about, in general, the pre-merge purple, such a secret, mostly because we didn't film a lot there. And so we're going to get into everything. So if anybody has a question, you can ask it in the comments and I will throw it on screen. Like, for example, Sarah is here to say hi. Yeah. Sarah,
hey,
your sister, as Katie called her, which I thought was
so confused about that.
I understand the confusion. We were in the same kindergarten class, so we've known each other a long time.
So that's actually a good point. Like, I didn't know like the whole backstory. Like, I knew like a good chunk of it, but I didn't know you guys were in preschool or kindergarten together.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So give us a little history about your relationship with Sarah and sort of what Sarah, especially because you're the person who's, I would say, more of the Survivor fan. So what did playing with Sarah mean to you?
Yeah, I'm like OG Survivor. Like, I started my first episode I watched was like season 2 premiere, live, and then I watched it straight through, I think, China, and then I went to college and had a life for a little bit. But you go away for a little bit, you come back, and I think I've watched every season again since 30 or 29 or something like that. So yeah, definitely a huge super fan. I've dragged a lot of my friends and family into watching it just from enthusiasm. And Sarah's definitely one of those people over the last 5 years. Like, I'll have watch parties or a friend or a family member will. So I definitely got a lot of people into it over the last run, where it's really been a lot of like heightened gameplay and all that kind of stuff. As far as Sarah, so yeah, we were in the same like school system. We actually grew up, I think, like a few blocks away from each other. We were in we became really close in high school, and then we've been best friends ever since. So like 20 years.
I love it so much. And how did Dan find you in particular? Or I guess, how did you find us? And then Dan sort of tracked you down and nabbed you for this.
Yeah, I think I was watching Maryland All-Stars on YouTube. And then I came upon New York, and this was, it was season 1 I was watching, but it was before, I think before 2 was filmed, because then I applied for 2 and I just couldn't make it from a work commitment. So I passed on 2 and then applied for 3, and Dan actually said no initially.
That's right.
Yeah. And then I wrote an email back and I was like, you're missing out, like.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then I think whatever worked. I mean, I had a female with me on the ticket, so I got elected later on.
You know what's funny is I actually still have messages because Josh and I were talking for season 2, and I remember like he was gonna come and then he didn't, and it was like this whole thing. And honestly, if he could have made it, he would have been here, type of situation. So it's kind of interesting about the timing part of it. Because you could have been part of season 2, but
I'm glad
very
it was 3. I'm glad it was 3.
Yeah,
You guys,
you're iconic, but I think Sarah is like super iconic.
Parvati energy.
Totally.
Who did I say Sarah reminds me of? Sarah reminds me of Parvati, but she also reminds me of she reminds me a lot of Michelle Fitzgerald, and I think that's just me like loving her, just being like, I don't have time to take shit from anybody today. So Kirk, can you tell me a little bit, because you were talking before we started about how you sort of pre-assessed everybody and you looked at our cast and you really enjoyed this cast. What did you think of the pair of Josh and Sarah?
Oh gosh, really? Honestly, this is a harder hot take because you're here, Josh, but you didn't stand out to me totally in my pre-assessment. But part of it might be as well because I know some things about some of the other players. I have some outside perspective besides the pre-assessment. Right. I don't have that on you. So I had less of a sense because whenever I see partners are best friends coming into Blood versus Water, I actually never know what to expect, because that can mean you're as thick as like family, or you are family to each other, or it can really mean you're actually pretty distant. You work together for 10 years. So I never know what to expect. So I didn't have any expectations for the two of you.
And what a pleasant surprise though, because I think I agree. Sometimes you see best friends and you go, oh, I don't know what that means. Like, I have best friends that I don't talk to every day, but you guys have such like this fascinating relationship where I remember watching you guys kind of talk about like how you'd prepared for the game and being like, well, these guys are coming in like ready to rumble. That's what I loved about like watching you guys at the start, especially on your separate tribes, really sort of finding the cracks you could sort of play in. So
yeah, I think we definitely pre-gamed like in the car on the way up, and I think she watched even I think she watched season 1 before we went to, and whatever else. But yeah, we were definitely ready to play, and we basically are blood. I mean, I have one sister. I call her sis number 2, so same thing.
So Katie wasn't really wrong.
Exactly.
But Mark was. I thought he said Hannah, but I think he said Anna. That was very funny. He spent the whole day with her.
Mark, you're not good with names, buddy.
To be fair, Chris was messing up Mark and Louie all day, which is very funny.
That was edited out. That was very embarrassing. I called Mark Louie so many times. I never called Louie Mark. I was always Mark was Louie, and I think
both just Louie.
And I honestly need to find all the footage of me getting it wrong and put like a blooper reel up, because it's pretty embarrassing how many times, even like when Louis was gone.
Yeah. So let's talk about Josh. Let's talk about how you felt in the pre-merge, which is I guess all of this, but I mean more so pre-swap, because you don't really go to tribal council until the double elimination, which is kind of inevitable. So how are you feeling on this tribe, and who did you find that you liked the most on Original Purple?
Yeah, so, one thing, I mean, I'm going to just say it right from the start, like that I would do differently is I kind of went in with an expectation, which you really shouldn't have any, but I think just as a super fan, you're planning for every possible contingency, which isn't always a good thing, as even Survivor seasons can attest to. So I went in, it was like after Game Changers, I think. So I went in with this very strong, like, I'm a strategist, like I'm going to come off like a super fan. I don't know whether these people I'm playing with are going to be like not really strategy people, or they are. And so I really wanted to have no target especially pre-merge. So I kind of went into it thinking, well, how can I do that? So my way of doing it was essentially not really committing to anyone early on, which is in retrospect, like with the group that I was with, which just happens to be full of like major gamers, I probably should have showed my cards a little more, because instead people took it as like standoffish. So that's something that I didn't want to be the Sierra Easton that like threw out the Caleb's name and then I was the one going home. Like that was my mentality at the time,
I think it's a fair fear, and maybe Kirk, you can speak to this a little, because I haven't played a live game in a while that isn't full of people I kind of know. But when you walk into a place full of strangers, it can be really hard to not game too hard, but find the gamers and connect. And
Yeah.
I agree. I think like you just kind of end up on these outskirts where everybody is like, yeah, I work with Josh. And then you just get swapped into a horrible position where everyone's like, I don't want to really work with Josh. And it just like snowballs from there. And it's like a terrible way.
I mean, that said, I think the dynamics were fascinating. Like the one thing I will take from it is this was my first like live Survivor in maybe ever. So you have confidence, but you don't know like 100% how you're going to perform. So watching the season and even like experiencing it, I definitely felt afterwards like your reading skills are still on. Like you really knew what was going on. You knew who was tight with who. And you could see that in some of the confessionals. Like even though I wasn't putting my cards out there, which turned off some people, particularly Hoy, it was also just the way I was playing. And I wasn't a target. No one was saying my name, really. Right. I mean, so but the dynamics there were really interesting. I can help you guys break it down a little bit, and I'm sure you'll get more from the other purple, in time.
When they eventually start showing up. So Kirk, what did you think of Josh's original position? I'm sure you watched this with like Hawkeyes, and you had all these thoughts running through your head. So what do you got for us?
Well, I thought Josh, I mean, like you said, I thought you were playing it quite skillfully at the start. I don't think you made, like, if I was going to make stats on this, I don't think any errors were made until literally like maybe this round, in my opinion. I think you're playing a pretty solid game from my perspective. But it's also hard to say because I've been in that situation where what is it with purple teams in Survivor? Even in LRGs, you win. And I've been on a purple team. I've won all the challenges prior to like a merge. I know what that is. But at the same time, it's super scary because when you go to tribal council, you don't know where anybody really is. So they can be blowing smoke up your ass the entire time. So I think, it goes to show when you went to tribal council, you guys knew what was happening. You had a plan, but then the swap happened and you, like you said, you got swap fucked. There's not much you can do, but I do think maybe when we get to it, maybe there are some things you could have done a little bit differently in this episode. I'm not sure if it would have had a different result, but it's some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, any thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, I mean that seems like later in the episode, but yeah, I mean, as a general answer, I think I threw the book at them that I had. I actually like, how you leave with like regrets in your head. You're like, oh, maybe I could have done this or I could have done that. And watching the conversation I had with Pete and then with Mark and all that, I actually thought I exhausted whatever avenues that were available to me. Certainly you could like grasp at straws and pick one thing here or one thing there, but ultimately that vote was unmovable unless I found an idol, so.
Right. I agree. And Chris, you saw all this footage because you had I remember being very present in this vote, and I just remember being like, oh man, Josh is so screwed. And I couldn't stop thinking that. And I felt so bad. This is one of the votes where like it's one of those situations where like, who's going to go home no matter who loses. And sort of both sides. And so you're just watching it and you're like, oh, I'm about to see someone's dreams go. And you just like feel so bad on production.
I actually want to say on that note, I want to say that at the challenge, the blocks thing or whatever, I stood there. First of all, I shouldn't even survive the first vote. So then when I survived it and then I like got to the end of the train of like purple coming in, I was like, let me be the surprise at the end. And then so I walked up there into the challenge, and I knew, because I knew a little through the grapevine what happened with Sarah at the Charles vote. And I was like, okay, it's either me or her. And so like it was bittersweet. Like I was like, at least the good news is if I lose, she gets to stay. And that's kind of what I wanted to happen. So in that regard, I'm glad that it's the way it happened. I don't know if she could have survived either.
Yeah. And what was great is that you stuck around for day 2. And I'm sorry we made you sleep in that tent, but there was not a lot of room going on in that house.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was nice.
And you got to stick around for day 2 and really sort of watch day 2 unfold, which I was really glad you were there, especially like kind of as the fan and rooting for Sarah. Like I thought it was a lovely sort of touch that somebody's loved one actually kind of stuck around. No offense to everybody else. They had lives to live, but like you got to sort of stick around. Katie has jumped in to say he did a fine job. We just knew we could count on Susan to follow Emily post-merge on a vote. So I think this is a really great point of like, this is finally the intersection of blood versus water. But I just wanted to jump back to Chris. What did you see of Josh's game pre-swap that you got to kind of experience in the edit?
Katie, you're awesome.
Honestly, you know what? Like having all the footage, there really wasn't a lot of Josh that I had to work with. So whatever I did have was definitely shown pre-swap. But I think this episode here really shows the scrappy fighter that Josh is. And he can be a really great strategist. Like I think he was very close into turning people's opinions around on him. He did everything he needed and could have done possible. And it just didn't work out because, like Katie said, I mean, Susan's just going to follow what Emily was going to do, right? He exhausted the fake idol idea the previous round. There was no way he could pull that off a second time. What else? I mean, Kirk, you're like one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen. Like, what would you have done? Like,
all right,
honestly?
so this is the only thing else, the only other option I think might be out there, and still, like, you can't help it. There is a mom and a daughter on the same tribe. They might vote together, right?
I called her a pocket vote.
Oh, totally, like totally. It could be, but you know, there is that sense that Emily at least is projecting into the universe. I am willing to vote her out. That is in everybody's mind, and everybody I think knows this as well, right? So it's like you need to take that to your advantage. And so how do you do that? You have to lay lower than like Susan gives me like Tina Wesson vibes, like early Tina Wesson vibes. Like I get it, and so she's already gonna win this game if she gets to the end, right? So you need to lay lower than her. Like you need to lay so low in the ground, and you need to throw mud when nobody's looking. And so I don't like. I think you had to throw mud against Susan more, and you had to do it in the laying as low as possible. Like, and I don't know what that exactly looks like, if that's possible with this group, with the amount of time that you also have, but it's something I think I would have liked to see.
The thought makes sense to me, and I can go into details and like dynamics that explain that, because I felt like I did that as much as was available to me, but I appreciate
Let's jump right into it. I think time, as Kirk said, is the biggest factor. It's just why these moves can't happen. It's because there's not enough time.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Susan, that was the clear target, and the reason being, as you guys know, like the numbers at this point are, what is it, like 6 yellow, 8 purple, or something like that?
Yeah, because yellow loses Charles, which brings it down to 6, and then you guys, after losing Vontae, lose Sandy, so it's 8.
Yeah, so the odds of me getting a yellow out were slim to none. So really, by the time I threw Sandy under the bus, Susan was the only target left. So that was pretty clear that was going to be the plan. And even though, Kirk, I think you're right in picking up on that, like Emily wasn't like, hell no, I'm not voting for her, and neither should you. Like she wasn't like that, which was a little bit of an open door, but I viewed it more as like deference. They're just both very sweet people. Neither one of them. We did develop bonds. You know, people say that, but like you feel somewhat close to certain people. So they were just so nice. It would have been tough to throw them directly into the line of fire, or Susan especially. So like you said, it did have to be very covert. So my way of doing that started with Pete, because long story short, he was the only one that really gave me any kind of strategy talk after the swap, like the only one. Yeah. Eddie essentially ignored me, wanted nothing to do with me, tried following me when I was looking for an idol. You know, Katie was like, really interesting of a player. Like what I really liked about her was that like when you were on her side, you really were happy that she was on your side, but she wouldn't let you. I think it was her first time also, so she wasn't about like the other layers of subterfuge. So she wasn't really like thinking, oh well, let me trick him. So like when I knew she was with me, I knew she was with me. When she wasn't, the same as Eddie, like really didn't want to talk strategy with me whatsoever.
Well,
So,
and I just want to say, I think this is a good indicator of like they were with you and they didn't want to lose you, but when they lost you, they had to lose you. Like it was one of those situations where like a tribe in Survivor loses the challenge and has to cut somebody. I think it reminds me of like when Jabeni loses in David vs. Goliath and they have to lose Lyrsa. And they're like, look, we don't want to lose Lyrsa, but we have to. And it's a self-preservation tactic. But I think you're also really correct in that Pete is the powerhouse of this tribe. Like Pete's the mob boss. He's the one.
Yeah. And he was the only one that was willing to keep open doors. I think just because he's also a big Survivor fan and has played before. So I recognized that pretty early. And even though I know Mark is of that nature as well, Mark was very distant also. And, you know, and that's surprising a little bit. You know, like the conversation that he and I had was sort of like a Hail Mary. It was like one of the last conversations that took place. And I expected him to be a little more like willing to at least talk, but I think Yellow just felt compelled to be very close, not only strategically, but socially. So I didn't think that anyone really wanted to be seen talking to me. It was like Scarlet Letter, you know, it was, you know, one of those things.
Right. I'm trying to get this to load. Great face from Mark this episode. Just Mark looking so like I think that is the feeling in this situation of like, oh God, I have to vote Josh out. And like he talks a lot about. I think it's interesting. Mark is one of the players who clearly has the most going on in his head and just isn't able to execute a lot of it. Where he's thinking about like, I would like to keep Josh over Sandy. I would like to, you know, do these things, and it doesn't always pan out for him, but we see his wheels turning. And I think you were one of those wheels where he knew that keeping you would benefit him because Sarah and you were a pair. And did you ever talk to them explicitly about like flipping on purple and sort of not working with them?
Yeah, you heard me say that in the confessionals a few times, you know, and there's also this weird like flow like from the Sandy episode to my episode where like basically in the beginning, I'm telling them I'm a complete free agent. Like I'm not working with anyone on the other side. Like, cause I really wanted it in their mind. Like he's isolated, you know, like he's a free vote, you know? And then when I realized that it was me, you know, then you see me in the conversation with Mark start to open up like, by the way, I'm working with Gary and Louie. And like you said, you heard me say in the confessional afterwards, I really wasn't working with Louie, but I was trying to give him something he needed to hear, you know, that he could open the door for me. Because at that point, I knew the argument of, oh, let's link up with Sarah and cut Susan carried less weight in that vote because by this point, they know the merge is coming. Mark knows Louie's waiting for him. Pete knows Sam's waiting for him. Eddie knows Inessa's waiting for him. So, like, that didn't carry as much weight at that point in time, you know?
Absolutely. So, Kirk, what do you... like I want to hear a little bit more from you because we like there Josh is like a well of information and I feel like you have such a fresh perspective on this whole season. We lived it 2 years ago. So what are you thinking with all this sort of pre-merge cacophony?
Well, okay, so I've watched, you know, Blood versus Water Survivors a few times, both on TV and in LRG form, and I've started to come up with a theory. And my theory is that you want your partner to get voted out early on if you want to do well. So I'm getting a little feedback on my end, so I apologize if it's
okay.
if it's my bad. But I think Sarah could do pretty well at this point going forward. I have a lot of faith in her because she's not going to be hunker down with expectation of having a partner. And I think that really helps players going further into the game. So I'm trying to look at my list of who doesn't have a partner right now, but kind of like going forward, I'd be looking at them. Like if I was in the game with a partner, I would want to team up with all the other partners moving forward.
It was just Katie on my side.
So
Okay.
yeah, Katie's missing her partner, as well as Gary, Hoy, and Senchea on the other side. And I'm not forgetting anybody else, right? And now Sarah's missing her partner.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah.
They should all team up.
It's a good
I
point.
agree.
And you hear obviously a lot of the conflict from Sam and Senchea is about like, I want to play Blood versus Water, and then like Senchea talks a lot about how you should utilize me as an individual. And you can see, I love that moment where Hoy's like, clearly you're talking about voting out people like me, and I'm not going to let that happen. But you're right, and I think it actually makes the like Josh sort of just said, it makes all the yellow and purple divide kind of go out the window come the merge, because everybody's going to start to link up back again with the people that they care about and try and protect their interests while also protecting their alliances. Let me tell you, it's about to get absolutely fucking nuts.
Yeah.
That's what's awesome about Blood versus Water, though, because it ingratiates this other element of pre-relationships that like you saw at Winners at War. Like that's not in a normal season, like at the merge. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think something interesting is that Kirk and I played in a game a few years ago, and Kirk actually played with his partner, Dustin. So, I know how it feels to play with a pair and how threatening that could be. And I was actually on a tribe with Kirk's partner, Dustin, and the very first tribal council, I, along with a few other people, made it a point that we needed to vote Dustin off first in order to make sure that pair could no longer be in the game. And we executed that plan right off the bat.
Woo!
And
The shade.
it's such an
That's
easy thing to
right.
jump upon. So that's why I think Kirk's point is like smart, like the five of them teaming up. It's an easy, obvious choice. And I'm pretty sure they can get more people on the bandwagon to split up pairs that are obviously going to go to the end together.
And to that point, Chris, it's like, you remember how emotional I got. I was at the auction. I was crying. I was screaming. If this was on YouTube, I would have had like spit coming out, snot. I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck because it was so real, right? You're playing this game, you lose your partner. And I feel like there's the potential to see that with some of these relationships coming up, which could be. So in some ways, it might have been better to, I don't know, take out a mom and a daughter now as opposed to later. I don't know.
But to Kirk's credit, he ends up winning the whole game, despite his partner being the first one out. So I mean, your theory does work, just like Natalie did. So I think that's very interesting, and it was something that I don't even think you really brought up in your final tribal council speech.
No.
So I think that's pretty amazing.
No, I didn't have to, Chris, because you won me the game with your question.
Oh,
literally.
I think a sign of a really good friend is somebody who like asks you the good jury question, and you're like, thank you so much. Like, thank you, judges, for your question. I just want to say that I kick ass. Like, that's the best sort of setup you can get.
Was this Pirate Booties?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. I'll watch that.
And so, Josh, let's circle back a little bit to when you see the Charles vote happen. Did you get to talk to Sarah at all about like what the hell just happened? Like, did you ever get a chance to sort of catch up with her in this moment?
It's really, really weird. Like you sometimes, especially when you're watching Survivor, you're like screaming at the TV at these people, like not making the obvious move. The weird thing is this whole tribal thing. So like when you're tribes, it's like tattooed in your brain, like from the start. That's why we see so many people like stuck in certain lineage of strategy because that beginning loyalty just means so much for some reason. So to that point, like even when we would cross with the other team, because Sarah and I were never on the same tribe together, she and I just wouldn't talk, which is weird. Like we talk about everything. Like I literally saw her in the tent at the swap, And like we maybe exchanged 2 words together because I think we both like looked at each other and we were like, oh, you're fucked, me too. All right, who do we need to talk to? And then at that point, I'm just trying to warm up to my people, and they weren't about it. And I was like, all right, so let me just be me and just like forget that I'm on the outs, and maybe that will start to open some doors. So I go to the opposite side of the tent to start working on, that. And I joined the group of whoever it was on my new tribe. And I honestly felt like the class nerd that no one wanted to talk to. And it was an awful feeling. And I was just like, so then it's downpouring in this tent. And at this point, not only am I rejected, but I'm getting pissed. So it's like pouring, raining. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go fucking look for an idol. And I just bolted out of the tent and just was the first one that started looking for an idol, which a few minutes later started like a mad frenzy of everyone deciding to get soaking wet and look for this idol. So that was a bit of a shit show, but it was a good time.
So what you're saying is it's your fault that we don't have the idol find on camera. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I guess so. Oh, did you not film it because it was raining? Is that why?
Yeah, we put all our gear inside because we didn't have enough umbrellas. I guess next year we'll bring more.
Yeah, and by raining, it was like full on raining.
Yeah,
downpour.
So let's circle back a little bit. Hoy has a comment that is so big it covers up Chris and Josh's faces. But let's talk about sort of the time on Purple and who you were really connecting with and who you were really working with. So Hoy says, I had a genuine intention and interest of working with Josh. We def bonded, but like Inessa said, it was difficult because Josh wasn't giving me anything in the game itself. So who do you think you really wanted to work with? Who was your intended alliance?
Well, I mean, I think to Hoy's, Hoy and I've talked a little bit about this. Like but in a confessional, he said, I have to get trust to give trust, which really isn't untrue. Like as an individual, it's really not untrue. I'm a very loyal person, but when I meet you, I'm very like, I'll be nice, but I don't instantly trust you. There are people who are like that, and I'm just not, Mm-hmm. So I'm like slow to warm up and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of how I was with the team as well at Purple at the beginning. And I think it just threw off, like, namely Hoy and Inessa and Sanchea and Louie, who are the biggest, strategy people from my original tribe. So I think they thought like, oh, like what's up here? Because it was easy to be like, oh, Sam and Sandy and Susan, they're sort of, this is new for them. It's, it's a new experience. They weren't running around, like Tony. So I think they just didn't know what to make of me, which to Hoy's comment, like I was aware of that at the time, but I was fine with it because I really knew I wasn't the target, and I was really just trying to make the close bonds with who I really, really connected with. And in the game, once we got to the actual tribe, which is a little different from pregame, you think you have bonds, and then you get there and you're like, oh, they're not acting the same, Right. But, which is how I felt with Hoy and Sanchea. But Gary and I clicked. Like, I just really just liked him a lot. And so, like, I was all about Gary. And then he approached me. There was a moment on Purple where we were, like, alone early as a team. Mm-hmm. And I think Yellow was going to their first or second tribal. And we really had a lot of time on our hands. So we were. Oh,
yeah. I remember that. You guys are just like, you look like you're like on vacation. You're just dawdling around, playing in the playground, looking for idols, which are not there at all, which is hilarious. But that was really funny.
Yeah, right. And so that I actually initiated that also because we were just kind of sitting around bored and like no one wanted to talk. So like for the first, I think 2 or 3 hours after we won the first 2 challenges, no one was separating into groups talking strategy because no one wanted to be the first one. So finally at some point, like we're waiting and I'm like, you know what, maybe they hit an idol around here. So let's just split up and start looking and we'll share it as a team. And you see that I think in like the 3rd episode where like, we're all just splitting up and searching the joint pretty much. And Hoy and Louie come up to me and they're like, oh, did you find anything? And I asked them the same and so on. So at that point, then strategy started to happen because people could get people privately and start talking about it. So that's kind of how the door opened for Purple, and there was no turning back at that point.
It's a lot of fun. And Chris, what did you think of just the power players on Purple? Because we're gonna see a lot of them going forward. So and this isn't to discount anybody, but the people who were the super fans that came to play, I think I would say that's Inessa, Louie, Hoy, Josh, and Gary, but we no longer have Josh. And I think those 4 are the core of Purple. Not to say that Sanchea isn't a fan, but I think that those 4 are the super fan brain trust. So Chris, what do you think about them and this sort of alliance on Purple that potentially could have happened?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like those 4 were the core, the true core on the Purple Tribe. And then from there, they obviously built a relationship with Sanchea, and then there was Sam. And then we look at the first vote, and it really was between the 3 people that were the least super fans, right? So with Sandy, Susan, or Ivanti going home first. And that was because they weren't as knowledgeable in the game. So I don't know, I would love to hear this from Josh. Why do you think Ivanti became the first target? I mean, we've kind of heard a little bit from Ivanti, we've heard a little bit from Sandy, but neither of them, I don't think, were completely in the majority vote. But tell me what you think about it.
Yeah, it was a lot. So at the point that we start looking for an idol and people are starting to have their conversations, similar to what I said earlier about not wanting to be Sierra Easton, saying the first name, that I think is what threw people like Hoy off, because when those conversations were taking place, I didn't want to name throw, and these people had no problem name throwing. So that just kind of put me. What?
I could only guess who had no problem.
Yeah. So I sort of then was like, all right, this is. I guess this is happening, and so from my perspective, my first sort of break was I thought Sanchea was awesome pregame, and then we got onto the whatever you call it, the beach. It technically was a beach there, beautiful. And she was not talking game with me, didn't want to come up to me, and I guess I didn't go up to her. So there was a moment that you're observing what everyone else is doing while you're having conversations. At least I was I could even see myself in the confessionals. I'm not even looking at the camera person. I'm looking, at what everyone else is doing. And so I just saw her running around having private conversations, and I wasn't a part of it. So I was like, all right, I guess this is happening. So at that point I was like, all right, who are the people that actually would work with me? So while we're looking for an idol, Gary and Inessa came up to me as a twosome, and they were like, let's work together, And so at that point, I already, like I said, I was very interested working with Gary. So I was like, all right, done. You have my word. There's no questions asked about this. So then once I started getting wind of other conversations that were taking place, then I started to be able to digest who was working with who. So I did hear about this whole queer person of color alliance, which I wasn't entirely clear on. Is it just people of color who are queer, or is it queer and people of color? Because then I would be a part of it. I was very confused.
Hoy, if you want to clarify that, go ahead in the comments. I don't know. I wasn't on Purple when this was happening, so I didn't see it. But
I think we heard a little bit. I don't know where I heard it from. It might have been in the last episode, but there was a period of time where Sanchea and Hoy and Ivanti went to the bathroom, and at that point it was the obvious, everyone else looking around going they're working together. So we kind of knew all right, so they're together. So I think at that point, Gary and Inessa, who are major strategy people, they started to assemble a plan that wouldn't involve them, because I think and I can't speak for them, but I think they were all right, she's doing her thing, so let's get our people assembled. Right. So that's kind of what I witnessed from the outskirts. And then so you even see that in the early episodes of Inessa being oh, I've gotten this offer from Sam and Sandy and Susan, And I also have this Gary, and then Hoy and Louis were sort of in the middle. Like they wanted to work with Sanchea, but they also wanted to work with Gary. So it was a lot of like groups that were very malleable. And so in the beginning, when we realized like this Sanchea Avanti thing was happening, I think people started to mobilize against that a little bit. That's the best way I can kind of put it. So then at that point, once Gary and Inessa approached me, then at that point, I think Gary already knew, and maybe Inessa, that they had Sam, because they must have had private conversations with him about like, oh, we're working with him, and oh yeah, that'll couple with Sandy and Susan. So I think it was sort of like you have one of them, you have all three of them or something. Like, to their credit, I really didn't talk strategy with any of them early on because, again, I was trying to just be like, oh, team, and I don't want to throw names out there, which, again, in retrospect, was a mistake with this particular group of people.
Yeah, but you really only had like 2 names you could throw out there before like you hit like a mine. If you throw like Inessa's name out there, like shit's gonna hit the fan. So it really is like all about sort of who you end up talking about. And so Hoy sort of says in the comments that like there was this day one alliance between Sanchega and Hoy, and I think Hong and Serena to an extent, which was like a queer and person of color alliance that ended up kind of spiraling out of control, where they lost Serena, they lost Hong, and then they lost Avanti, and then it was kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do with this anymore. So it is like it's a really interesting alliance that starts to form and then just kind of gets like thwarted. Kirk, what did you think when you saw this conversation? I think it's this episode, right, Chris?
Yeah, so this episode, we had one of, I think, the best conversations so far is Sanchea and Gary sort of clearing the air about what is going on, because, I mean, it's this very rocky relationship, but it shouldn't be for them. It should be very easy, but it's not. So, Kirk, what did you think about that?
Do you mind if I just say one thing real quick?
Hit us.
Okay.
So the reason I think that is, and again, they could speak to it, is because of Sanchea running around like early. I think she just got this label of like she's playing hard. So I think people like Gary and myself were very like, whoa, like slow down, girl. Like, so I think that's kind of what was at play and why she was a target at the Charles vote.
Gotcha.
Yes, exactly. So, Kirk, what do you think?
So I was fascinated by the human interaction. Like I told you guys I had like a top 5 list that I have. Gary is one of those. I just absolutely adore Gary. He seems like a buddy of mine that I would have here in little Norton Shores, Michigan. Like he seems friendly, but then he's got like this little like coarse attitude side. He seems like the person that will just come up to bat for you if anything goes wrong. Like I really dig him. But it looked like he was getting a little bit like called out in a lie. I wasn't really sure if I was following it, and I wasn't too sure if he was playing the part good enough. Like I felt like you could tell the tension was there, and I guess the best way to say it is I don't think Gary was helping the situation. I think he needed a sidekick in that moment to kind of bridge that a little bit better. And I felt that Sanchea was doing a really nice job. And to credit Josh on what he said, it is really hard when people create an alliance that's based on like a definitive group, and you're not a part of that. Clearly, I mean, it's just very easy to make that a target early on. That makes total sense.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Gary and Sanchea have this conversation, and I think they have the most fraught relationship because of the Charles vote, but also because Sanchea is Gary's target. And I think all of this saves Sarah. So talk about, because Chris, if I remember correctly, Sarah does not play her block a vote.
Right. So I remember right after Josh's tribe loses, I privately go up to Sarah and I'm like, so hey Sarah, just so you know, this is the last time you can use it. Would you like to use it? And she said, no, I don't want to use it. And I was like, okay. So that was the end of that. But I looking back on it, like from like seeing how everything was like formulated into the episodes, I feel like it was the best move for her, because if she blocks any of her former like yellow people's votes, then it's sort of like a kind of obvious because she got something. They're gonna know it's probably her. and it may like hurt her, like in the long run. And you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I agree.
Like, I think she made the best choice just not to use it and just hope for the best for you, or she just knew that there was nothing that could be done to save you at that point, even one vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think I think, sometimes it is good to just like hold on to your idle clue, hold on to an advantage that might not be useful to say, hey, I might throw this at somebody later. I might just try and F with someone's game later down the line. It's like Ron Clark ripping the immunity, that like advantage menu to get rid of the part where it says like expires after the third tribal council so that he can, mess with Rick Devens in the post merge. Like it's a moment that I think Sarah is actually, and Sarah says herself, she didn't really know who Josh was working with, so you run into the danger of blocking a vote of like Pete, and then maybe Pete's the person who voted with Josh.
Right.
It's a really tricky advantage, and I actually think Sarah does make a decent move here by not playing it.
Right. I agree.
And so, Josh, what was your let's just talk about the fun of this whole experience. What was your favorite challenge you got to participate in?
Probably the first one, because I was really, really nervous about it. The flipping of the wood tiles.
Yeah.
And I stood, because I'm not fast, and Sarah's a marathon runner. So I was like, all right, this is going to be, I'm going to be toast, and the tribe's going to hate me. Because you're worried, like, early, like, your performance is going to affect, how things go. And no shade, Sarah. It's obvious that I beat her in, like, about 3 seconds. And, and that worked out really well for me because, between that and the second challenge with the blindfold, I was partnered with Hoy, and I think we found like most of our tribe's pieces to win that challenge.
Oh yeah, that great clip of you just running through the field, like dragging Hoy along with you. Oh, one of my favorites. I didn't use it in your opening, but it was like on the short list for like, gosh. And Kirk, we were talking a little bit about this immunity challenge. This was a hard immunity challenge. Like, to give everybody a lot of credit, this challenge, like, we had to go down to unity because immunity was really hard to spell in a fast period of time. So, Kirk, what did you think of this?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the construction. I loved the block size. Everything about it was a great challenge. Just, it's like one thing a lot of people don't know that just watch these is that they all run on a predetermined schedule, and so all the challenges almost always have like a lemon rule or a rule where the game will go faster if you run out of time. And so that just happened to be with this challenge. But I'd love to see a group like spend 5 hours trying to actually win it because I think it would take that long. It looks really brutally hard, but I hope it comes back.
Chris, it does come back, and we chose a smaller word, right? What did we choose?
No, so I forget what we chose, but I know that we just cut the blocks down and then we repainted them.
Okay.
I think it could still be immunity. But
it's either like immunity or like winner or something like a 6
I think it was winner. You're correct. It is winner. It's 6 blocks. And instead of 2, I built a third one, and there's 3.
Yeah, but we won't tell you more than that. Watch out for season 4.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And I think like this challenge, we were like, how do we make this Survivor Dream harder? Oh, let's have them pass off this to one another. And I saw like really the concentration, and like especially your eyes, Josh. Like you can see some people are just like so laser focused on winning this challenge. It was the most intense challenge, I think, of the day for me to watch, and sort of, I was really feeling it for like whoever was going to lose. So I think, Chris, you cut this part out. There's a part where Inessa drops the stack, and then I turn the camera to Eddie, and Eddie just goes, "Thank you, Inessa." And like,
yeah, this, like Hoy just said, this challenge was like almost half an hour. So I had to like cut it down, so there was a lot of like little moments that had to go just because I don't want to bore people. If you really want to see it, I'll put it all on YouTube.
There's a lot of me in there, so let's not do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of you. But did you see Louis' comment on YouTube? I thought that was funny. Louis said something like, "The ghost of me is still waiting at the end of the line to start the challenge." Because if you watch Louis never even got to like attempt it because they just kept falling before his turn. So he didn't even really touch the rope the whole challenge. So I think that was like really funny to me.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. So Josh, just to like as we're sort of coming to the end of things, I think Kirk said it as well. Like you did make a lot of moves that I think a normal person would give up in your position, and you never gave up. And I think that's one of the most important things that we see sort of in your arc is that you're never going to stop until that torch is snuffed. So did you like learn anything about yourself playing this game? Did you like learn anything about Survivor? I mean, you talk a little bit about playing harder, but is there anything that sort of surprised you about this experience?
Yeah, definitely. And I was just sort of catching up on all the comments. You guys are awesome. It was fun to read all their perceptions and stuff because it's like this giant puzzle. I think it's a good analogy for life. Like we all have our very limited perception, and then as a group, everyone brings a different piece to the puzzle, and that's really the connected piece at the end of the day, like what we all bring to the table. So it's interesting to see like what other people were thinking early on and stuff. Just as a shortcut, I think Avanti's name got thrown out there. I remember her being off at confessionals for a long time, and you see her in the her episode Boot. She's like in these long confessionals, just staring ahead, like not really knowing what else was going on. And I think it became very clear to all the game players, I guess, that had different connections, like me to Gary and Gary to Anessa and Anessa to Hoy and Hoy to Sanchea, like as they're commenting on that it was like, oh, well, let's go for Avanti. I think it was a move to weaken Sanchea at the end of the day, which is why Gary threw out her name. And so that's kind of how that went down. Hoy, yeah. So, as far as the swap, obviously, I want to just speak a minute on like the Sandy vote. I honestly thought I was toast immediately. Yeah. I thought I was the first one done, and I was very, very close to it. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. So when we first swapped, we had some time together. I recall us sitting around a table and with my new tribe. And again, like I mentioned in the tent before, I'm trying to bond with these people. So I'm just trying to be me, loose, let's talk about whatever, anything that's not the game. I don't care. And so what winds up happening around this table is no one is talking. No one is talking to me. No one is talking to each other for a good half hour. And I'm just it's like nails on a chalkboard. I wanted to scream. So, and then we're getting pulled off into confessional one at a time. And I was the last one to get pulled. So finally I get pulled for confessional around the opposite side of where we're sitting. And then, as I'm in the middle of my confessional, I see these bitches looking for an idol as a group. And so I was instantly just livid. So in the middle of my confessional, I'm talking to the camera, and I was like, I found the idol, you're wasting your time. I was just so annoyed that they were, looking for it, and they waited for me to walk away. So that was a weak moment. But that was the Sandy vote. So then from that moment on, you see in my confessional, I tell Sandy, why don't you come to me and I'll go to you if you hear my name, and vice versa. So at that point, she, is such a sweet, awesome person. And if I ever visit New Orleans, I am hitting you up, Sandy, by the way, because New Orleans is awesome. So she comes to me at some point and tells me oh yeah, it's you. It's totally you. So at that point I had the intel I needed to and I think I must have asked why and what were certain people saying and blah, 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 blah. So finally I start then, okay, well then if it's not me, it has to be Sandy or Susan, and it's not going to be Susan because of Emily. So I start going hard on Sandy, and then that's when I make my whole pitch about, keep me, Sandy, Caleb already is home. You need Sarah, yellow is dwindling. What are you doing? And I guess that message, carried me through that first vote where I honestly thought I was toast.
Yeah.
So that was really awesome. That was for me, that was the silver lining of the swap screw, is that I wasn't the first out. I got to work some moves there and last a little bit longer. And then I tried it again in the last episode.
It was very effective that first time around, and it just goes to show, like, I think the first time you guys went, I was like, oh, I think Josh can pull this off. And the second time I was like, if Josh pulls this off, he's the best Survivor player I've ever seen in his life. But I don't know if he's going to do it. So Kirk, let me hear some more of your thoughts, because I know you've been sort of watching along this whole time, and so much is in your mind about this. So anything else to talk about this pre-merge?
Oh gosh.
It's okay.
These are the ones that this episode was all about Pete to me. Pete was my MVP. I just saw him wheeling and dealing. It reminded me of years ago, Chris, when he happened to be at the same game. And I saw the man with the knee brace walking around and talking with more people than anybody else. So you can't, I love Pete, but if he's a politician, he's been a politician his whole life. If you give him wiggle room, that accent will charm you to death. And I feel like he might be doing it. And my fingers are crossed. Pete, you are on the top of my list. I love Susan. She gives me Tina Weston vibes, like I said. It sucks that she was against you, Josh, but I'm rooting for her. I don't know why I'm rooting for the mom that doesn't. It seems like she doesn't know exactly how to play Survivor, but I love it, and I want her to figure it out in the 11th hour and make some drastically great play. That's what I would love with Susan. Okay, so I know Louis from Survival Challenge. And so I was coming in going to vote for Louis. And then I saw his partner, Mark, and I was like, Daddy. And I was like, so I moved over. Mark has now topped Louis, for lack of better words. And
oh, God.
Then I saw Eddie and was like, I'm done. But then, okay, Gary would be my best friend out there. Gary is awesome. I would literally call him best friend even if he didn't like me. I would just go, best friend, will you help me in this alliance? And then Anessa, oh my gosh, I think I would put this out there that Anessa is in the top 5 of all Real Foot players of all time. I hope she kills it. Yeah. I love watching her. I love watching every play she makes, because she just always goes balls to the wall. She will find a way out. She will try to convince you. She will lay down. She will throw mud. She does it all. Her and William Yelton are both, like, when they were in that season together, that was my favorite thing ever. So those are my top 5 that I'm still rooting for big time. I haven't lost anybody yet, so
Mazel tov. And Pete says, I finally had knee surgery and no brace any longer.
Oh, Pete, I'm so happy to hear that.
And first of all, I just have to say that Mark was voted, I think, most attractive during our season of Survivor Buffalo. And then we just started calling him Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Survivor Buffalo. And also, this is Anessa's very first live reality game as well. This is her sort of start. And, this is where it all begins. This is the chaos starting.
Oh gosh. So she learned everything from this experience.
She learned everything from this experience. And of course, being such a smart Survivor fan. And
of course.
And I think, like, now we're about to hit the merge. So maybe, Josh, you can talk to us a little bit about what your plans would have been if you had made the merge. Let's in this situation, Sarah's gone home on the other tribe, right? That's probably what happened. Or Santea, but likely Sarah. So what do you do in this situation if you make the merge?
That's a great question. And I actually just thought of that the other day for, like, the first time. Because I don't think like that, but I was like, well, let me play what ifs, like, in advance of, like, talking to them about this. And it occurred to me that, like, if that happened, then we go into the merge. Like, let's say it was Sarah, then the merge would be 8 purple and 5 yellow. And I would have been a complete free agent because, Sarah wasn't there. And I was telling Yellow that they needed to keep me for the Sandy.
Over my dead body. Well, you know in real life, Sarah, so let us have this hypothesis.
Yeah.
I was telling them they needed to keep me for the Sandy vote, but I really didn't go deep into, like, I'm only working with you for the rest of the game, Yellow, if you keep me until it was my turn. So I didn't really feel like I was stuck working with them in any way, shape, or form. So ultimately, my game plan would have been to sync back up with Gary, who I felt really just close with, and I would have just, like, picked his brain about where he stood. And I had a little bit of an idea from the Charles vote that was sort of haywire, that almost should have never happened, because if Sarah and I had connected a little bit, and I know we're on opposite tribe, illusion or whatever, but like if we had connected a little more, I would have flat out said, like, I'm working with Gary and Sam by proxy, like, vote with them. And if I gave her that certainty, and I did say that, but it was like in passing, you know. So she just, we've talked about this as the two of us, and like she just, that played with her mind. And then Gary and Sam didn't say anything to her during the Charles vote because they were trying to keep it on the supreme DL. So they didn't placate her and make her feel like that was actually going to be a vote for Sanchea. And she, you know, in her perception, if they had done that more, Sanchea goes home there, period. Yep. So
it's a crazy situation. And that's what I love about this moment. So you and Gary, I think, would be a great pair. And it's really about who Gary can kind of align you with going forward. In a weird way.
I mean, I knew who he was working with. Like, I knew he had relationships with Hoy and Louie and Anessa. I was in that initial conversation. But you hear me say to Mark that, like, I know Anessa's going around to everybody having conversations. So even though like I said, I felt she was genuine, I wasn't like, she wasn't my number one because I knew she was there to play. But people like that excited me. I wasn't intimidated by them. I was willing to talk with them and make moves with them if that was what needed to happen. So I was definitely trying to keep open channels. I think what happens if I make the merge is Yellow, and this isn't spoilers, this is total hypothesis, and it may have happened, it may not have happened. I think Yellow would have been picked off like very quickly. And I think you would have seen me go to the end with maybe some of those inter-purple relationships, maybe the final four, final five, something like that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think this purple alliance, if it has 8 people, is unsurmountable. Like, it is, you're screwed. And on the other side of this, Kirk, we have this reality that Chris and I sort of know a lot about. So what do you think is going to happen going forward? Like, what do you see? I know this is a bold, sort of big thing, but what do you see as a potential?
Okay, so who are the 8 people again? Can you break that down for me?
Well, so let's I mean to talk about the actual merge, the merge that we've just hit, because
yeah,
we're going into this, and also I think Chris shows it in the preview. 2 people are going home. We are doing a twist where the top 2 vote getters are going home in this game.
Yes.
Very exciting. I think we stole it from Reddit. Thank you to Reddit. And and so we have in this merge. Here's my skills. Let's go. We have Eddie and Pete and Katie and Emily and Mark, along with Susan from Josh's old tribe. And we have Sam, Sanchea, Hoy, and Nessa, Gary, and Sarah. And is there somebody else? Am I missing someone? I think that's
Sanchea?
Louie?
Louie. I always think Louie.
So
he's under the radar.
Oh, geez.
With the
so essentially 2 original yellows that are still in the game could go home this next round. It doesn't, because it's the merge. It's just the 2 highest votes, right?
Right, 2 highest vote getters.
Okay, so the numbers person in me is like, okay, so who out of the yellows have already received the most votes? That's who I think would be the next to possibly go. So it'd be like, who's gotten those votes? Katie got like a rando vote here and there. I don't know. It's really hard to say, but at the same time, I feel like a group, like, large alliances never work, and once it's merged, people try to make moves. So I feel like this is an opportunity that, like, people would make a move. Like, you just throw one vote that could send somebody home, right? Like, it potentially could if the other votes are unanimous. So I mean, anything could possibly happen. It's almost advantageous to throw a vote.
Yeah, and I think that, like, what's going to happen is wild, but the bigger thing is just that, like, even if you have, it's what, 7 and 6? Oh my God, I'm so bad at math. Yeah. 7 and 6. So even though you have, like, these two groups, like they're going to get something done that they want to get done. It actually kind of benefits the minority in this group because you can't split 7 votes to outnumber 6. Kirk is doing the math.
No, I was crossing out people's names because what's tricky too are the relationships that are still in the game going into the merge.
Right.
I mean, that's going to play into it. I would want to say that the partners, the people that still have somebody in the game, would probably want to work together at this vote, making that a group of 6 right there. But I don't know if that would come together. That would be Eddie, Anessa, Emily, Susan. Who else? Mark, Louie. Is that it? Am I missing?
It's just so much. It's so much yellow and purple blending that it's like, how is that even possible? You know, there's old allegiances, and then there's these bonds. It's going to be a clusterfuck.
It is going to be.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's what I love about this episode is that we also have 2 immunity winners, right, Chris?
2 immunity winners. Yep. 2 people.
2 immunity winners. 2 people going home. It is the merge of a lifetime, and also part of why we have to have Josh's round go so quick and why Josh doesn't really have enough time is because we need to get to the merge by the end of the day. And I was like completely exhausted at this point. It probably been 14 hours, and we needed to get to this merge vote. And you're going to see kind of like the peak of everybody's emotional like tiredness and craziness come out, and I can't wait. It's definitely like the best episode. Go for it.
I think like having to like have them all strategize when we're all tired and we didn't really give them a lot of time between immunity and tribal council.
Yep.
That's what conveys like the craziest tribal council of the game. Like the Charles vote, I would say it was very crazy, but I feel in some ways like this is just a little bit above that.
As
I'm so stoked. I can't wait to see how Sarah gets out of this, or hopefully does get out of this, like, or how she reacts to finding this out.
Yeah, and Louis says the Hot Mess Express is just getting revved up. And
Anessa, I love you.
I think that the people who are in the most danger here are certainly the Yellow Tribe because they're down in 1 number. But I do think it's people like Sarah who have been a target early on. I think like Sanchea has a little bit to worry about because she had some purple try and flip on her before, and they're worried maybe she won't forgive them. You have people like Susan and Emily who are such a bonded pair. It's getting intense. Like, It's going to be crazy. Oh, yeah. Katie says there are a lot of whispers. The crew asked us to speak up, and we actually could not. That is true.
Can I tell you something? I have to make these subtitles for these episodes, and this episode that is coming out on Friday, there's like over 85 that I had to make, like because you guys would not talk loud at all, and there would be no way for really anybody to really hear it. So yeah, this was the most challenging episode I would say to ever put together.
The subtitles are good, and I just want to say you guys did an awesome job editing this. It is very watchable. This should have like thousands of views. I don't know why it doesn't.
Well, I think if everybody shared it to their Survivor friends, I think the biggest thing is people right now don't believe that anything can fill the void of Survivor 41 not happening. But seasons like this, the college survivors, they are so good, and they like really deserve more recognition. And Chris has been editing these past episodes, and like they have kicked ass. So like Chris, thank you for kicking some real butt when my jobs don't allow me to anymore. I was like, I can't wait to edit this episode and then edit this season. And then I was like, no, life is calling, and I couldn't do it anymore.
All good. It's all good. It's been fun.
Josh, any final thoughts? Any other wisdom you want to impart and impress people like Anessa in the comments? What else do you want to talk about before we head out for the night?
I think I touched on most of the big stuff. Let me think. One thing I did want. One thing I did want to say is I'm really glad that you guys like didn't show our worst sides, because I don't know if it's just me or like everyone else, but I have some bitchy confessionals, so I'm really glad that you did not like go there. You know what I mean? Really glad about that.
I can't remember you really being like bitchy, like in a really bad way. I thought everything you said, like the one confessional that like was done on Jessica's camera was like super clear, and you were constantly looking off. Like everything you said there was so like Survivor to me. Like it was such a good confessional from you, and I love that.
Okay, I mean I was really grateful. And both Sarah and I were worried we were going to be made to look like either like noobs or like
No,
whatever.
I don't think so.
So no, it worked out really well. So it's just been so fun to watch. We've had like watch parties, like she's come to my house or I've gone there or whatever. We watched Zoom one night together, so it's been a fun experience. Obviously, I wish it worked out a little differently because, not even just like for lasting longer, but like I would have loved to have sunken my teeth in at the merge. Like I think that would have been so fun, and like that's where it happens. That's really where it's like, fuck the tribes. It's like, like we're just gonna see who's got the chops. So it would be cool to have a second go at that for sure.
Yeah. So Kirk, it's your favorite question. Would you ever play another one of these games again?
Yeah, no doubt.
This is the question to you, Josh. Is Kirk's favorite question to ask?
I wanted to ask him. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I would definitely play again. And I feel like, I mean, maybe it sounds like you guys have played a couple times. I would assume you get better in future times.
I would say yes.
Ooh, tepid.
But the thing is, like, you start to learn like cues and like social bonds, like things you had said about Katie, like you knew when she was with you, you knew when she wasn't. That's one of the biggest things you learn and you pick up on, and you start to learn so much about human connection and interaction on a level that you don't learn on your day-to-day life. And I think that's why people love these live reality games, because you challenge yourself in so many different ways, and you never get to do the same thing in your day-to-day life. And I think once you do it once, it only prepares you so much for the next time and the next time. And sometimes it's like 8 or 9 or 10 if you're like certain people. I think Kirk, we've played with someone that's played like 10 live games, and she's like amazing. But
well,
yeah.
I also think like the best part about what I've actually found, the best part about going pre-merge or pretty early is you don't have the cockiness of making it to the end and thinking that you're really good. Because I've gone to the merge and lost and then been like, oh, I'm really good at these games, and then absolutely sucked ass in another game. So you need the lows to sort of teach you how to be better. And I think like you always improve upon how you feel you play, even if you don't improve upon your positioning.
Louis, thanks for the love. I'm gonna DM you. I had a weird dream last night, so I'm gonna DM you about that.
Josh does give a great massage, because Josh, you have your own business, right?
Well, I've been like running a spa for a long time, but I'm in massage school, so I'm about finishing up with that.
Amazing. So
and Pete, I'm glad I'm not the only one that had confessional. Yeah, thank you.
I got you. I also had confessionals that I'm glad didn't show. Well, eventually we'll have our secret scenes episode at some point.
Oh my God, Josh, I'm gonna have to bring you back just so that, like, if you were to get voted out, you would just give massages. Like, that would be worth it for me, like a Ponderosa situation for production. Kirk, you have to fly in, either play or be on production, and bring Dustin, and we'll have
I love it. I love it.
I'm in.
I hope you do well, and then maybe give us massages.
Yeah, fun fact, at the first challenge when we were at the beach after the initial like Sanchea beating Serena challenge, we were all in like a line, my tribe, and I was like, let's just start a massage train. So I
think I have a photo of that.
Yeah, there's like 10 of us just massaging each other. It was a good time.
Oh man, I love those early photos where everything, nothing has gone wrong and everybody's happy, are some of my favorites. Even though they're really blurry and far away, so they look like they were taken by like a creep at like 4 a.m, but they're really funny. And I'm so glad, first of all, that Kirk, you could join us. Kirk, do you have a winner pick? Final question. Do you have a winner pick?
Gosh. Oh my gosh. This is rough because I know some of these people. I am gonna this sucks because I know I'm gonna pick the wrong person. Okay, I'm gonna go with somebody I don't know ahead of this game. So I'm sorry if I've watched you before. So Anessa, that takes you out. I'm gonna go with Gary. Gary, I hope My fingers are crossed. I really hope, dude.
Okay, I will cross my fingers for you as well, just in case. And Kirk, thank you so much for joining us. And we can watch you recapping Survivor at UVA, which I love. It's a great season so far. And what is there anything else you're recapping that I can?
Nope, nothing right now. So I'm just doing that, and then we're trying to hope COVID goes away so we can host a game next year in Michigan. And if not, we're going to do more of this. And Josh, I agree with Vanessa. I think you have a great voice. You have a really, you speak eloquently. So, man, join our team.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun, guys. It was awesome.
Yeah, Josh, it's been amazing to catch up with you. We got to see you in this Survivor New York Sequester game, but like more importantly, we just don't get to see enough of you in our New York City day-to-day. So it's so nice to get to talk to you again, and thank you for joining us and giving us literally every drop of tea. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and when the world goes right, we'll definitely do some city shenanigans again. I mean, come on, crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We all got drunk like a couple weeks after this season taped, and that was really fun. So now I want everybody to come and get drunk. It was like a select group. We need more. So,
I remember Mafia till like 4 a.m, and I was like, all right, this is happening.
Oh well, that bar has closed down now. Tragically, R.I.P. to Stone Creek. We found out that was really sad. We were like, oh my God, who else is going to tolerate us? And Chris, thank you so much for joining us as always. And what can you tell us about the merge that's coming? Anything else we can talk about? Just it's stressful. It's good.
It's so stressful, but it's so much fun to see like people like interacting with each other, seeing Sarah's reaction to Josh leaving the game. I think the immunity challenge is fun, some funny moments. I think the mad scramble, certain realizations from certain players are just hilarious and amazing. Seeing like a couple of the pairs link up and get to strategize for the first time with each other. And Tribal Council is great. It's fiery. Somebody calls somebody out. It's great. It's everything that you want in a Tribal Council, I think. Blindsides.
Juice.
Yes. And I even like the preview for the next episode after that. It's really fun.
I cannot wait. And you can see all of that on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/c/Survivor New York. And our episode is going to air Friday at 7 p.m. And you can follow us on Instagram and at Facebook. And we are casting for Survivor New York season 5, which is an eventuality. So like, don't get stressed about it. It's not tomorrow. But you can apply to be on Survivor New York in the future by going to tinyurl.com/SNYcasting. We would love to talk to you. We love friends. We're very nice. As you can tell, we're really fun to talk to. So come play our game.
My sister might apply and she would straight up kill it. So just saying.
It's noted. It's noted. You tell us when her application hits our inbox and we will read it immediately. Thank you to everybody, our alumni in the comments. It's so fun to see you guys. Quarantine has always been tough, but it's really good to catch up with everybody. And you can find more live reality game content at facebook.com/live-reality-games. It kicks ass. Kirk and Dustin worked really hard for all of us to have a space to connect about our love for Survivor. So make sure you like that page. That's the biggest part. Can alumni apply? Pete? No, we will reach out when we're thinking about doing a returner season.
But your wife Penny can apply. I think
Penny can apply.
Oh my gosh.
Lynn Spillman will reach out.
Yeah.
I think she got fired actually. But...
She did. Yeah. She's
Awesome. So thank you guys so much. We're gonna head to bed, I guess. I don't know. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Good night.
Bye, guys.